You know those Sunday brunches that start with mimosas fizzing like false promises and end with the kind of family chatter that feels more like a trap than a tradition? That's exactly where I was, sitting at my in-laws' sun-drenched patio table in their sprawling Connecticut backyard. The kind of place that screams old money with its white wicker chairs and linen napkins folded just so. The air smelled of fresh scones and sea salt drifting in from Long Island Sound. A reminder that we were only a short drive from the coast I'd come to love in secret. Derek, my husband of 7 years, cleared his throat like he was about to drop a bombshell wrapped in a bow. He was 42, still clinging to that boyish charm that had fooled me once, with his neatly trimmed beard and the polo shirt that hugged his bank manager's shoulders just right. "Everyone," he said, tapping his knife against the crystal pitcher of orange juice, his voice carrying that fake confidence he saved for board meetings and family gatherings. "Before we dig in, I've got some news that's going to make this brunch even sweeter." I felt my stomach twist before he even said it. Lydia, his mother, 68 and as polished as the pearls around her neck, leaned forward, her eyes lighting up like she'd been waiting for this moment. Victor, his dad, 70 and retired from some vague corporate climb, nodded along with that approving grunt he reserved for anything that smelled like a deal. And Tyler, Derek's younger brother at 35, slouched in his chair with a smirk, nursing a Bloody Mary like it was his job, because honestly, with his string of failed startups, it might as well have been. You all remember Elena's little Seaside Cottage, right? That impulsive buy she made 4 years ago up in Maine, when she was going through her independent phase. Derek air quoted the words, chuckling like it was all a cute anecdote, and the table rippled with that knowing laughter, the kind that said I was the punchline. My shoulders tensed under my light sweater, the one I'd thrown on that morning without thinking, because even after all this time, I still dressed for their approval. "Well, folks, I took care of it. Sold the place last month for $75 while she was off in Tokyo playing corporate jet setter." The words landed like salt spray on an open wound. $75. My cottage, the one I'd scraped together every skipped latte and freelance hour to claim as my own. Lydia clapped her hands, her rings catching the sunlight. "Oh, Derek, that's brilliant, finally putting that money pit to good use." Victor raised his glass. "Smart move, son, real estate's all about timing." Tyler whistled low. 75 grand? Hell, we could fund my next app with that. "What's the plan? Yacht club membership?" Derek beamed, gesturing to the spread of avocado toast and artisanal quiches that had arrived from some overpriced caterer in Greenwich. "This brunch? It's on the cottage money. At least one morning's covered." More laughter, warm and inclusive, wrapping around me like fog I couldn't see through. I forced a smile, my fork hovering over my plate. Because what else could I do? Speak up? In this family, my voice had always been the whisper they tuned out. But then my phone buzzed in my lap, sharp and insistent, pulling me back from the edge. I glanced down, unknown number. But the area code was Maine. Something deep in my gut whispered that this wasn't just a wrong call. It was the first crack in their perfect little facade. Before we dive deeper into how I ended up at that table, surrounded by people who'd turned dismissing me into a family sport, let me take you back a bit. If you're here because you've ever felt like your wins were just footnotes in someone else's story, hit that subscribe button, it's free. And it means these tales of quiet comebacks can reach more ears like yours. Now, let's unravel how 7 years with Derek Hargrove taught me the exact shape of my own erasure. That morning, like so many before it, I'd woken at dawn in our split-level colonial in the suburbs. The kind of house that looked picture-perfect from the street but felt like a cage inside. I slipped into the kitchen at 38, my bare feet cold on the tile, and started the coffee, 2 pumps of vanilla. Black, just how he liked it. Elena Ramirez, compliance expert at a mid-sized firm specializing in international trade regs, reduced to barista in her own home. While he scrolled his feeds at the breakfast nook, my good morning landed like mist on glass, unseen and evaporated. Lydia had texted him overnight about the brunch menu, never me directly. Even though I'd be the one charming the caterer later. "Tell Elena not to overdo the hollandaise this time," she'd typed, as if I were the help rather than her daughter-in-law. Last time, it had been perfect, golden and tangy, but in the Hargrove world, my efforts were always one critique away from failure. It had started small, those 7 years ago, when Derek and I met at a networking mixer in Boston. He was the smooth-talking loan officer with dreams of climbing the bank ladder. I was the rising star in compliance, fresh off a certification that had me jetting between coasts. We bonded over shared laughs about corporate absurdities. And before I knew it, I was saying, "I do," in a beachside ceremony on Cape Cod. Trading my maiden name for his because, well, that's what you do, right? Blend into the Hargrove mold. But the blending came at a cost. When I nailed that promotion 3 years in, 40% raise. My own team, handling deals worth millions. Derek's toast at dinner was a mumbled, "About time you pulled your weight financially." The next week, Tyler hit a $100 scratch off. And the family turned it into a saga. Lydia snapping photos, Victor toasting his lucky bloodline. My corner office? Barely a footnote. Over time, it piled up like driftwood on the shore. Lydia forgot my place setting at Thanksgiving until Derek noticed. Victor debated stock tips with Derek right across from me, ignoring that my salary had outpaced his son's for years. Tyler borrowed cash for one last venture, joking I'd probably ledger it all in Excel, which I did. But not to control, just to survive. At their weekly brunches, my $1 million contract close got a polite, "That's lovely, dear," before the spotlight swung back to Derek's quarterly quotas, hailed like he'd reinvented banking. So I rebelled in whispers. 4 years back, I opened a shadow savings account. Derek none the wiser. Every overtime hour at the firm, every client lunch I packed from home, every impulse buy I talked myself out of, it all funneled there. A quiet fund for the woman I'd almost forgotten, the one who grew up in a bustling Queens apartment with my immigrant parents. Learning that hard work wasn't a footnote, it was the whole damn book. The cottage came from a whim that turned into salvation. I'd spotted the listing late one night, a weathered 2-story on a cliffside in Camden, Maine, with salt-eaten shingles and a wraparound porch that hung over the Atlantic like it was listening to the waves' secrets. 2 acres of rocky shore, wild roses tangling the fence, and inside, rooms that smelled of pine cleaner and forgotten summers. The price was $55, steep for my secret stash. But it called to me like a lighthouse in fog. I drove up on a rainy Tuesday, telling Derek it was a consulting errand in Portland. The road wound narrow and slick, flanked by lobster buoys bobbing in the mist, until the trees parted and there it was, my escape, perched like it had been waiting. Eleanor Hayes, the 82-year-old widow selling it, met me at the door in a faded cardigan, her silver hair pinned back with a seashell clip. "Built it with my Tom after the war," she said, her voice like weathered driftwood, warm but edged with loss. "Not fancy, mind you, but these waves, they've held more stories than any library." She walked me through, her hand trailing the banister as if saying goodbye. The kitchen had a clawfoot tub sink Tom had salvaged from a shipwreck. The bedroom window framed sunsets that painted the sea gold. In the attic, she paused at a locked trunk. "Family heirloom," she murmured, "old maps from his Navy days. Nothing valuable, just history." When she quoted the price, it was $10 under market. "I see it in your eyes. Dear, you need this like I did once. Walls that let you breathe." My hands shook signing the papers in her cluttered parlor, using my maiden name, Elena Ramirez, on every line. The keys felt like anchors in my palm, heavy with the weight of what they unlocked. Weekends alone. No judgments, just me and the tide. For 2 weeks, I kept it buried, stealing drives north to sweep floors, fix a leaky faucet with YouTube tutorials, and sit on that porch until the salt air scrubbed away the week's grit. Derek found out by accident, the way secrets always do, applying for a home equity line on our dream kitchen Reno. The banker pulled joint credit and there it was, Pinecliff Realty. $55 mortgage in my name only. His face shifted from confusion to fury in the car ride home, silent miles that exploded once we hit the driveway. "You bought a beach shack without me? With what? Your side gigs?" His voice climbed, veins standing out like ropes. By evening, the Hargroves descended, Lydia's SUV crunching gravel first, Victor's Cadillac behind. They staged it in our living room like a deposition, Lydia on the couch, pearls clutched like talismans, Victor pacing like he owned the floor. "Elena, sweetheart," Lydia cooed, the word dripping honey over thorns. "What kind of wife hides assets like this? Marriage is transparency, not this." Victor chimed in, arms crossed. It's unstable. Elena, secret funds, solo purchases. We worry about your state of mind. I sat there, hands folded, explaining calmly. It was freelance earnings. Fully mine, no joint impact. Derek slammed the remote down. Partners share everything. The irony burned him. Who hadn't noticed my Saturday absences? Forgotten our anniversaries, or asked about my long hours. But I learned early, arguing fed their fire. So I zipped it, letting silence be my shield. The months after were a slow siege. Derek dubbed it my divorce fantasy pad, badmouthing it at brunches until it became lore. Poor Derek. Saddled with a secretive wife squandering on seaside whims. Lydia escalated with a family summit, PowerPoint slides on coastal erosion risks. Septic failures, tax hikes, all projected on our dining wall like doomsday prophecies. Tyler cracked jokes about me going full mermaid. Victor hinted at other visitors on those weekends. Derek just watched, his quiet complicity the sharpest cut. I showed them photos anyway, the herb garden I'd coaxed from sandy soil. The bookshelf I'd hammered together, crooked but mine. The porch swing where I'd journaled dreams they couldn't touch. They stared for 3 beats. Then Lydia patted my hand. Hobbies keep us sane, I suppose. The word landed like a wave crash, condescending, diminishing my sanctuary to a pastime. But those escapes saved me. Every Friday, I'd pack a thermos of tea and head north, the highway blurring into coastal haze. The cottage taught me to mend nets from beach trash, spot seals bobbing offshore, whisper fears to the wind. It held my truths, the dread of brunch interrogations, the strength it took to smile through erasure, the calendar marks proving I was still whole. 2 months post-summit, the tide turned, literally and figuratively. My boss, Carlin Wynn, called me into her corner office overlooking Boston Harbor on a crisp March Monday. "We've landed the Tanaka merger," she said, no fluff, her eyes sharp as choppy water. 6 months coordinating their Tokyo ops. High-stakes compliance, national security overlay from the trade deal. You're our pick, Elena, top of the clearance list. I'd aced the vetting, spotless background, expertise in cross-border regs that had saved the firm fines in the millions. 13 candidates, my name circled in red. Hazard pay, relocation bump, your quarterly doubles easy. Carla added, sliding the folder over. 6 months away felt like air after drowning. I said yes before doubt could surface. Telling Derek that night over takeout sushi, ironic. Given Tokyo, he paused mid-bite. Chopsticks hovering. You? Solo in Japan for half a year? Why not remote? Suspicion laced his words. Not pride, because it's classified fieldwork, I replied evenly, ignoring the familiar sting. Lydia called within the hour. Her voice syrupy through speakerphone. Elena, darling, isn't this selfish? Abandoning your home for ambition? Families need presents, not postcards. The security briefing a week later sealed it. Agent Maria Torres from the Commerce Department's Intel unit laid it out in a sterile conference room. All assets registered in federal databases for cleared personnel. That Seaside Cottage in Camden, she said, tapping her tablet, gets flagged as protected. No transfers without multi-agency sign-off. It's about shielding against foreign entanglements. Your work touches sensitive trade secrets. My humble cottage, mocked as folly, now a government ward. The poetry of it almost made me smile. I spent days fortifying, hired a coastal management firm versed in vacation rentals for diplomats. Automated bills with backups, installed cams feeding to a secure app. The emergency binder for Derek? 20 pages. Contacts, tide charts, flood risks. Maintenance logs, and in bold. Federally registered, no sales without authorization. I triple underlined it. He skimmed it with a snort over dinner. It's a fixer-upper on a cliff. Elena, not the White House. Relax. The binder hit the counter. Untouched, as I packed for Narita. Tokyo's humidity wrapped around me like a second skin the moment I stepped off the flight at Haneda. But the real weightlifting was the one I'd carried for years, the invisible harness of the Hargrove expectations. My hotel room in Shinjuku overlooked a neon-veined skyline that pulsed with life. All cherry lights and hurried crowds below. So different from the quiet crash of Maine waves I'd left behind. For the first time in forever, my shoulders eased, no longer braced for the next casual dismissal. 6 months stretched ahead like uncharted ocean. full of promise and the kind of work that made me feel seen. The Tanaka merger was a beast, layers of regulatory mazes tying U.S. tech exports to Japanese manufacturing. With whispers of national security woven in like hidden currents, my days blurred into conference rooms smelling of green tea and printer ink, poring over manifests for dual-use components that could tip trade balances. Carla checked in weekly, her emails crisp. "You're killing it. Ramirez, clients already asking for your playbook." Praise like that? It was foreign, a balm after years of Derek's shrugs. But the nights, those were when the cottage cams became my tether. I'd log in from my laptop, the app pulling up feeds crisp as sea glass, dawn gilding the porch rails, gulls wheeling over the surf, the herb pots I'd planted now bursting with rosemary and thyme under the management's careful eye. No disturbances, just the reliable hum of automated alerts, tides low, no erosion threats. It grounded me, that little square of coast. Proof I could build something enduring without permission. About a month in, during the security deep dive for the merger's classified annex, Agent Torres called me back. "That Camden property," she said, her voice steady over the encrypted line. "We've run the full audit. Turns out Eleanor's late husband, Tom Hayes, he wasn't just Navy, he was OSS during the war. Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA. That trunk in the attic? It's got authenticated maps, coded dispatches from 44. Stashed there post D-Day. National Archives flagged it years ago as potential heritage asset. With your clearance, the whole cottage is now under joint protection, commerce and archives. No transfers, no liens. Without our green light, it's not just yours anymore, it's a piece of history we can't let slip." I paused mid-sip of my instant ramen, the steam curling up like disbelief. A hidden artifact? Tom's family heirloom wasn't junk, it was a relic from the shadows of World War II. Sketches of U-boat routes and supply drops that had helped turn the tide in the Atlantic. Eleanor had downplayed it, probably to keep the sale simple. But now it bound my seaside haven to federal safeguards. The irony settled like fog over the bay. The place Derek mocked as my frivolous fling was now untouchable. Wrapped in red tape thicker than lobster twine. I thanked Torres, hung up, and stared out at Tokyo's glow. A quiet thrill building, if he ever tried anything. I doubled down on precautions. The management firm got the full brief, federal asset. Artifact secure in the attic vault I'd had installed pre-departure. Cams upgraded to 24/7 with motion alerts straight to my phone. Bills auto-paid through a layered account. Emergency protocols etched in stone. Contact Elena Ramirez only for verified threats. No access without dual auth. I even slipped in a subtle note about the historical value, framing it as personal family lore to avoid spooking them. The binder Derek ignored? I emailed him a digital copy. Highlighted sections glowing like warning buoys. Protected status, violations federal offense. His reply was a thumbs up emoji and, "Got it. Babe, enjoy the sushi runs." No questions, no curiosity, just that effortless dismissal, like my world abroad was a vacation, not a lifeline. As my flight back to Logan loomed, I packed light, souvenirs for no one but myself, a lacquered box for my journals, matcha tins for the cottage kitchen. Tokyo had sharpened me. The merger's chaos reminding me why I fought for this career, not glory, but the quiet power of knowing the rules inside out. Little did I know, those rules would soon drag Derek under like a riptide he never saw coming. The flight home was a red-eye haze. 14 hours of recycled air and half-formed worries. I'd texted Derek my landing time twice, no reply. Baggage claim at Logan felt like limbo. Families hugging, signs waving, but no familiar face in the crowd. Finally, a ping. Brunch at Mom's to celebrate your return. Be here by 11. No airport pickup. No, missed you. Just the Hargroves orchestrated welcome. Like I was a guest of honor in my own life. The cab skirted our neighborhood on the way to Lydia's, and I asked the driver to idle as we passed our street. Through the passenger window, our colonial looked altered. The front beds I'd weeded religiously, now manicured shrubs, uniform and soulless. The garage door hung ajar, revealing a sleek Audi I didn't recognize, shinier than Derek's sensible sedan. "Everything okay, miss?" the driver asked. Catching my stare, I swallowed. "It will be." We detoured to Lydia's estate. my pulse a steady drum against the coastal chill seeping through the vents. Her driveway was a showroom, Lydia's Escalade, Victor's Lincoln, Tyler's leased Jeep Wrangler, Derek's BMW, and 2 extras, a red convertible that screamed midlife impulse, and a hybrid SUV with a rental sticker. The house hummed with activity, laughter spilling from the open French doors like champagne bubbles. I smoothed my travel-wrinkled blouse, hauled my carry-on up the flagstone path, and stepped inside. The air hit me first, citrus scones and bacon, undercut by that faint lavender polish Lydia swore by. In the patio dining area, they were mid-toast, crystal flutes catching the October sun, the table groaning under quiches, fruit platters, and those bottomless mimosa pitchers. Derek at the head, Lydia to his right, Victor expounding on stock dips, Tyler scrolling his phone with one hand and gesturing with the other. And there, tucked beside Tyler but leaning toward Derek, was Brooke, his girlfriend of 8 months, all blonde waves and yoga-toned arms, her laugh a touch too bright as she touched Derek's wrist. Elena, Lydia trilled, spotting me first, her embrace perfumed and precise. Darling, you look exotic. Tokyo agree with you? The others murmured welcomes, Derek pecking my cheek without rising. Flight okay? He asked, eyes already drifting back to the group. Brooke smiled, sweet as artificial sweetener. We've missed your stories. Tell us everything, or should we dive into the food first? I slid into the seat they'd left at the foot, farthest from the action. Napkin already folded for me, and murmured about jet lag. The merger's grind, but the air felt thicker now, charged with that undercurrent of performance. Victor launched into a monologue on yen fluctuations. Tyler pitched his latest, Disruptor, app for beach rentals. Winking at me like we shared a joke, Brooke chimed in with travel tips she'd read online. Her foot brushing Derek's under the table, I saw it. The casual intimacy that had bloomed in my absence. Then Derek stood, that performative poise snapping into place. And the room hushed. Hold the small talk, everyone, I've got the real celebration queued up. He paused, savoring, as forks clinked to a stop. That's when he dropped it, the sale. The $75. The brunch funded by my stolen shore. Applause rippled. Lydia's gasp delighted. Victor's nod sage. Brooke clapped softly, her eyes on Derek like he hung the moon. I sat frozen, the mimosa turning sour in my glass. Until the phone vibrated again. Maine area code, heart pounding. I excused myself to the side yard, the gravel crunching under my shoes like breaking shells. Ms. Ramirez? The voice was clipped, urgent, a man's, with the clipped edges of a coastal lawyer. Harrison Caldwell here, representing the buyers on your Camden property. The cottage you sold? Or rather, your husband handled, but there's a problem, big one. Federal agents just raided our office, badges from the FBI and some archives division. They're seizing deeds, wire transfers, everything, talking fraud, cultural heritage violations. What the hell did we buy? His panic mirrored the roar in my ears. Raided? Already? I glanced back through the glass, Derek unfolding documents on the tablecloth. Crowing about his savvy negotiation. Lydia pouring refills with maternal glow. Mr. Caldwell, I said, voice steady as the tide I'd just left. Tell me everything, from the beginning. His words tumbled out in a rush, laced with that East Coast urgency that made everything sound like a closing argument. It was straightforward at first. Your husband reached out 6 weeks back. Said the place was a family asset. Handled all the paperwork himself. Deeds, title transfer, even the escrow wiring. We closed fast. Buyers are a retired couple from Portland, dreaming of quiet sunsets. 75 grand wired to your joint account that afternoon. But this morning, boom, 6 suits from the FBI, 2 from the National Archives. Badges flashing like storm warnings. They're poring over our files, muttering about unauthorized conveyance of protected cultural property and forged federal registrations. One agent, sharp woman, Torres, mentioned something about OSS artifacts triggering a heritage alert. What kind of cottage comes with a national security lockdown? I leaned against the garden wall, the rough stone biting into my palm, as Caldwell's panic painted the picture I'd half dreaded, half hoped for. Forged? Of course. Derek's initiative meant bypassing me entirely, practicing my Ramirez swirl on those dotted lines until it passed muster. And the artifact, Tom's World War II maps. Those fragile parchments I'd glimpsed once in Eleanor's attic. yellowed with age and inked with secrets that had outlasted wars. With my clearance tied to the Tanaka deal, the cottage wasn't just real estate, it was a vault in Uncle Sam's eyes. Flagged in databases deeper than Derek's bank logs. Selling it? That wasn't a quick flip, it was tampering with history. A felony wrapped in irony so thick I could taste the salt. I'll need copies of everything, I told Caldwell, my voice a calm anchor in his storm. And don't say a word to the agents about this call. Stall if you have to, client privilege. He promised scans by noon. His exhale ragged as we hung up. I pocketed the phone, the brunch chatter filtering through the hedges like distant thunder. Derek's laugh booming over some quip from Tyler. Lydia's coo of approval. They were toasting his genius right now, divvying up my stolen shore like it was chum for their next scheme. Slipping back inside felt like wading into high tide. The patio doors whispering shut behind me. I reclaimed my seat, the wicker creaking under me like a warning. Just as Derek launched into the encore, he unfurled a leather portfolio. God, he'd even bought the prop, spreading glossy comps and transfer forms across the linen. His finger tracing the $75 figure like it was his signature on the moon. Handled it all solo, he bragged, eyes alight with that rare spark of self-congratulation. 3 bids in a weekend. No agent's cut. Saved us $1,500 easy. And the signature? Piece of cake. Traced it from her old lease docs. Elena's got that elegant loop on the R. Nailed it after a couple tries. Victor leaned in, specs perched on his nose. Resourceful, son, that's how you build legacy. Lydia beamed, refilling his flute. Why let a dusty old beach hut drain us when it could seed something real? Tyler's app needs seed money, imagine. Coastal rentals, AI matched to tides. Tyler perked up, Brooke nodding along, her hand now fully on Derek's forearm. That easy affection no longer hidden by my absence. We could triple it in a year. Tyler said, yacht shares, private charters. Elena, you'd love the perks, weekends away. No more solo slogs. Their eyes flicked to me then. Expectant, like I was the board to rubber stamp their piracy. Brooke tilted her head, all faux empathy. Must feel good, though, Derek stepping up while you were conquering Tokyo. Partnership, right? I met her gaze, the mimosa glass cool in my grip, and murmured, oh, it's something. All right, taking what's not yours, that takes real nerve. The table stilled for a beat, forks pausing mid-air, but Derek waved it off with a chuckle. Everything's ours in marriage, love, shared sales and all that. My phone hummed again, not Caldwell, but a blocked number, the vibration insistent against my thigh. I slipped it out under the table, thumbing open the text. Ms. Ramirez, Agent Maria Torres. Commerce Intel, cottage transfer flagged 063 OSS. Fraudulent docs confirmed. Maintain cover at family event. Subjects unaware. Team en route. ETA 20 minutes. Reply, acknowledged, for protocol. 20 minutes. The words blurred for a second. My pulse sinking to the distant lap of waves in my mind. Those same waves that had cradled my secrets now crashing toward this sunlit trap. Torres had known since dawn. The databases pinging like lighthouse beams the instant Derek's wire hit. The artifact wasn't just history, it was the tripwire. Those OSS maps a classified echo that no forged Ramirez could silence. And the Hargroves? Blissfully toasting their thief. Documents splayed like a confession buffet. Brooke's fingers tracing Derek's knuckles as if sealing their new normal. I typed back, acknowledged, then pocketed it, lifting my glass with a smile that felt like armor. To new beginnings, I said softly, clinking with Lydia's flute. She blinked, surprised by my participation, but raised it high. To family and smart moves. Laughter swelled again, Derek diving back into visions of investments. Oblivious to the clock ticking like a tide clock on the wall. 18 minutes now. The first black SUVs cresting the hill beyond the hedges. Silent as submarines surfacing. What was brewing in that brunch haze was about to boil over. And for the first time in 7 years, my silence wasn't surrender, it was the calm before the storm they'd invited themselves. The second hand on Lydia's antique mantel clock swept past the 12 like a scythe through wheat. 15 minutes now. The air in the patio growing thicker with the scent of cooling quiche and unspoken greed. As if the house itself sensed the gathering storm. Lydia was slicing her signature lemon drizzle cake, the one she reserved for milestone mornings, when the first low rumble cut through the hedges, an engine purr. deliberate and unhurried, like thunder rolling in from the sound. Heads turned vaguely toward the driveway. Victor muttering something about late caterers. But I knew better. My phone stayed silent in my lap. No further texts from Torres. Just the weight of her ETA ticking down. 14 minutes. The conversation lulled into that post-announcement haze. Derek folding his portfolio with a satisfied snap. Brooke murmuring about investment timelines, while her fingers lingered on his sleeve. 13 minutes. Tyler launched into his pitch again. How the cottage cash could disrupt the Hamptons market. Complete with napkin sketches of appwire frames that looked more like drunk doodles. Lydia nodded along, her pearls swaying like pendulums. Victor interjecting with tales of his own 80s flips that built the nest egg. Derek soaked it in, the golden boy basking, oblivious to how his nest was about to crack wide. I sipped my mimosa, the bubbles gone flat, tracing the rim of the glass as if mapping an escape route. But there was no running from this, not anymore. The waves in my mind crashed louder, echoing the ones at Camden, whispering, "Let it break." 12 minutes. The rumble swelled, multiple vehicles now. Tires on gravel like the grind of oyster shells underfoot. Brooke glanced out, her laugh faltering mid-note. "Sounds like a convoy. Your neighbors throwing a rally or something." Lydia? Lydia waved it off, plating cake with maternal precision. Probably the landscapers, overdue for the fall mulch. But her eyes flicked to the window. A flicker of unease beneath the polish. Derek, ever the host, stood to refill glasses, his back to the glass doors. Voice rising in easy command. "To flipping liabilities into assets, here's to more where that came from." 11 minutes. The first shadow stretched across the patio stones. Long and official, cast by the lead SUV's bulk nosing into view, black. Unmarked, with those subtle government plates that scream, federal, to anyone who's ever binge-watched a procedural. Then the second, third, fourth, 4 in total. Positioning with the quiet efficiency of a chess endgame. Doors opening in unison to spill 6 figures in crisp navy suits and earpieces. Moving like they owned the morning light. No sirens, no lights, just purpose, badges glinting as they fanned toward the house. I rose before anyone else registered it, my chair scraping soft against the slate. The sound swallowed by the sudden hush outside. "I'll handle the door," I said, voice light as sea foam, though my heart hammered like surf on cliffs. Derek barely looked up, mid-pour. "Yeah, sure. Tell him we're mid-family time." Brooke's eyes widened a fraction. Tyler straightening with that boyish grin fading fast. But Lydia pressed on with cake forks. Denial her sharpest tool. 10 minutes, no, 9 now. The clock mocking as I crossed the threshold into the cool hallway. The agent's footsteps sinking to my own on the hardwood. Agent Torres led them, her dark hair pulled back severe. The same sharp gaze from our briefing months ago now softened by a nod of recognition. She remembered me, the compliance whiz who'd answered 3 hours of probes without flinching. The woman building walls of rules to hold back the tide. "Ms. Ramirez," she murmured, low enough for my ears only. Her team arraying behind like sentinels. "All subjects accounted for?" "Dining patio," I confirmed, stepping aside with a steadiness I didn't feel. The door swinging wide like an invitation to Judgment Day. "Dessert course. They've laid everything out." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough to the vindication we'd both seen coming. The agents flowed past, deliberate treads that vibrated through the floorboards. Torres flashing her badge at the ready while the others peeled off to secure flanks. No exits. No shadows. The patio fell into stunned silence as they filed in. 6 silhouettes eclipsing the sun like clouds over the bay. Forks clattered. Tyler's Bloody Mary tipping to stain the cloth red as spilled secrets. Brooke's cake slice crumbling untouched. Victor's specs slipping down his nose as he half rose. Mouth agape. Derek turned last, flute in hand, his easy grin freezing mid-frame like a photo caught in developing fluid. The documents on the table gleamed accusingly under the chandelier, his forged Ramirez looping lazy across the lines. "Mr. Derek Hargrove," Torres announced, her voice cutting clean through the mimosa's fizz. Badge held high enough to catch every eye. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, you're under arrest for wire fraud, forgery of government-protected documents, and unlawful conveyance of cultural heritage assets under the National Historic Preservation Act." The words hung heavy, each one a wave cresting, and Derek's glass shattered on the tiles, Merlot pooling like blood on Lydia's prized slate. The shards catching light like broken promises. This is a joke, right? Derek stammered, backing a step, his chair toppling with a clatter that echoed his unraveling. It's a property sale, simple. Above board. I owned it, we owned it. Ask Elena. His eyes darted to me then, wild with the plea of a man adrift. But I stood at the threshold, arms loose at my sides. The silence I'd honed over 7 years now a mirror reflecting his panic. Lydia gasped, hand to her pearls, the necklace snapping under her clutch, one bead rolling free across the floor like a tear. Officers, agents, there must be a mistake. Derek's a good man, a banker, for heaven's sake, resourceful, that's all. Torres advanced unhurried, cuffs emerging from her belt with a metallic whisper that silenced the protests. Selling a federally flagged property, complete with authenticated OSS artifacts from World War II, using forged signatures and bypassed clearances? That's not resourcefulness, ma'am. That's a chain of felonies spanning interstate commerce and national security protocols. She nodded to her team. One snapped photos of the table's confessional spread, the comps, the wires, the damning deed with its imperfect loops, while another bagged Derek's phone. Ignoring Brooke's squeak of, "Hey, that's private." Victor found his voice, blustering up like a squall. "You can't barge into a private home, I'll have your badges." But the agent nearest him, broad-shouldered, unflappable, held up a hand. "Sir, step back. Warrants are served, your cooperation's noted." Victor sank down, deflated, his face ashen against the linen. Suddenly every inch the 70 years he'd worn like a crown. Tyler's eyes darted, door to agents to Derek, like a cornered fox. His napkin twisted in fists. Brooke clutched the table edge, mascara already threatening to run, whispering, "This can't be happening," as if volume could will it away. Derek twisted toward me again, desperation cracking his polish. "Elena, tell them, wives and husbands, spousal privilege, you know I did it for us. The finances were tight, your trips, I was fixing it." His voice climbed, pleading, the man who'd dismissed my mergers now begging for my mercy. I met his gaze steady, the patio breeze stirring my hair like a sigh from the sea. No words, just the weight of all those unspoken mornings. The erasures stacked like driftwood. My silence, once my cage, now the key turning in the lock. Torres paused as she guided his wrists behind, the cuffs clicking final as a lighthouse beam. "Actually, Mr. Hargrove, privilege doesn't shield fraud against a spouse, and we don't need her word. Your brunch broadcast, the documents you paraded, that's confession on tape, courtesy of our discreet audio. Plus the archives alert, those maps in the attic? Tom's OSS codes helped sink U-boats in '44. Tampering with that legacy? It lit up every database from DC to Camden." Lydia whimpered, a sound raw and un-Lydia, as agents photographed the wine stain, the cake forks, the whole tableau of their triumph turned crime scene. But the money? It was for family. She pleaded to no one. Victor murmuring calls to lawyers who wouldn't touch this tar baby. Tyler bolted upright then, hands raised like surrender. "I had nothing to do." Derek mentioned it. "Sure, but I didn't." But the agent reading him Miranda rights cut him short, his protests dissolving into stunned compliance. Derek's final look at me as they led him away, past the hedges. Into the glare of waiting vans, was a mosaic of betrayal and dawning horror. His, "Elena, please," trailing like foam on the tide. The doors shut with soft thuds. Engines humming to life, leaving the patio in wreckage, shattered glass, spilled brunch, and a family portrait cracked beyond repair. Brooke sobbed quietly into Tyler's shoulder, but he shrugged her off, eyes calculating his own exit. Lydia clutched Victor, her empire of judgments crumbling under the weight of what they'd cheered. And me? I stepped forward into the sunlight, the air suddenly clearer, carrying the faint tang of salt from miles away. The storm had broken, and in its wake, the shore I'd claimed was mine again, stronger, unyielding, waiting. The cleanup that followed felt less like aftermath and more like the tide pulling back, exposing the wreckage on the shore, shards of Lydia's cake plate ground into the slate, mimosa stains blooming like bruises on the cloth, and the air heavy with the acrid tang of spilled wine and shattered illusions. The agents moved like a well-oiled current, one cataloging the table's evidence with clinical clicks of a camera, another sealing the forged deed into an evidence bag that crinkled like wrapping on a gift no one wanted. Torres lingered by the French doors, her radio crackling softly with updates from the vans outside. Subject secured. Perimeter clear. Forensics en route to Camden for asset verification. Lydia had collapsed into Victor's lap, her sobs muffled against his golf shirt. The woman who'd orchestrated brunches like symphonies now reduced to a heap of silk and regret. My boy, our boy, she kept whispering, as if repetition could rewind the cuffs clicking around his wrists. Victor, pale as sea foam, fumbled for his phone with trembling hands, dialing a lawyer whose number he'd programmed for emergencies like WWII. Not this federal deluge. Gerald, it's Vic Hargrove, get down here now. They've taken Derek. Something about artifacts? OSS? What the hell does that even mean? The line went dead after a pause. Gerald's voice tinny through the speaker. Vic, I can't touch this. Call the public defender. This is way above my pay grade. Tyler, cornered against the hedge wall by two agents, spilled faster than a cracked buoy. Look, I knew about the sale. Derek looped me in for the app angle. Yeah, but I didn't touch the papers. Swear on my Jeep. His eyes darted to the exit, then to me, pleading like a brother-in-law who'd borrowed one too many times. Elena, tell him, I'm clean. Brooke, back me up. But Brooke had slunk to the far chair, arms wrapped around her knees. Her yoga poise cracked into something feral. I just got here 6 months ago. This family's intense. Derek said it was all above board. I had no idea. Her voice hitched, mascara tracks carving black rivers down her cheeks. But the agents weren't buying the ingenue act, not with the timestamps on Derek's phone pinging her at late-night strategy sessions that smelled more like betrayal than business. Torres turned to them then, her tablet glowing with preliminary scans from the raid. Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, Sr., you'll need to come in for formal statements. Your names flag on ancillary transfers, $20 to Tyler's Ventures last quarter. $12 to Victor's club dues that didn't match his pension draws. And Lydia? Those emails encouraging Derek to handle the family assets while Ms. Ramirez was abroad? They read like co-conspiracy roadmaps. Lydia's head snapped up, pearls forgotten on the floor. Emails? I was just advising. Mothers do that. But Victor's groan cut her short, his hand rubbing his temples like he could massage away the ledgers. We trusted him. The boy's always been the smart one. The smart one. The phrase hung there, bitter as quinine, echoing 7 years of their toasts to his mediocrity while my mergers gathered dust. Tyler, sensing the noose tightening, flipped like a wave capsize. Okay, fine. Derek vented about the cottage for months. Called it Elena's divorce down payment. Said he'd flip it while she was gone to teach her a lesson. Lydia egged him on, showed him how to pull comps from her Zillow app. Victor? He fronted the notary fee. Joked it was pruning the family tree. I photographed the docs for his portfolio. But I didn't sign nothing. The agent jotting notes didn't look up. Material witness. Then, your cooperation's noted, for now. Brooke bolted then, mumbling about calling my therapist. But an agent at the gate waved her back gently. Ma'am, we'll need your device. Texts with the subject show intent. Can't wait for our beach weekends doesn't play innocent in context. She handed it over with a whimper, the screen lighting up a string of heart emojis and hotel confirmations from Connecticut inns I'd never visited. The Hargrove dynasty, built on whispers and winks, unraveled in real time. Lydia clutching a napkin like a lifeline. Victor staring at the wine stain as if it foretold their foreclosure. Tyler bartering testimony for leniency. Brooke shrinking into irrelevance. Torres caught my eye amid the chaos, her voice low as she signed off on the scene log. The cottage is secured, management firms holding tight. Artifact vault intact. We'll need your full debrief tomorrow. But, good call on the protocols. This net's wider than one sale. Derek's bank access? Flags on 3 other accounts. Women in similar binds, cleared pros whose assets he managed off books. Her words landed soft, but they stirred the undercurrent, not just my shore stolen, but a pattern, a quiet predation Derek had woven through his teller window, preying on trust like a riptide pulls the unwary. By noon, the vans had rolled out, leaving the patio a ghost of its brunch glory, agents' bootprints in the mulch. A single pearl winking from the grass like a lost earring. Lydia reached for me then, her hand clammy on my arm. Elena, darling, help us, for the family. But the word family tasted like brine now, eroded by years of their salt. I slipped free gently. Call your lawyer, Lydia. I'll see myself out. Driving away, their estate shrinking in the rearview. I felt the first true breath in months. The kind that fills lungs after surfacing from depths you didn't know you'd sunk to. The legal tide surged fast after that, pulling the Hargroves under while lifting me to drier ground. Premier Coastal Titles, the firm that rubber-stamped Derek's forgery, faced dawn raids by week's end. Their CEO, a smug Brunswick local, blubbering to Channel 8 News about routine oversights as his license vaporized mid-interview. The two agents who'd whispered comps over coffee with Derek, suspended pending probes, their LinkedIn profiles scrubbed clean by sunset. Even Lydia's country club Facebook post, proud of my visionary son closing the deal of the season. #family wins went viral for all the wrong reasons. Screenshots flooding inboxes as neighbors who'd long rolled eyes at Hargrove brags now forwarded them to tips lines. Harrison Caldwell's outfit imploded spectacularly. The Portland buyers, a sweet duo named the Langleys, suing for breach and emotional distress. Their dream retreat, now a federal crime scene, taped off like a bad vacation. Caldwell's partners ousted him in an emergency vote. His nameplate pried off the door before the subpoenas cooled. 6 months of forensics peeled back layers Derek had buried deep, not just the cottage, but $180 siphoned from joint pots over years, funneling to Tyler's ghost startups, a crypto scam that shipped 0 coins. Victor's hidden poker tabs at the yacht club, and a trail of Venmos to Brooke that painted their friendship in stark receipts. Spa days, weekenders in Newport, gifts wrapped in the paper of my erased presence. The sentencing came down in a federal courtroom in Portland. The harbor view through the windows a mocking echo of my Camden cliffs. Judge Harlan Voss, grizzled and no-nonsense at 65, eyed Derek across the oak bench, thinner now. 6 months in pre-trial holding stripping his polish to bone. Derek stood for his allocution, voice cracking on the edges. Your Honor, I thought I was protecting us. Elena's trips, the cottage sitting idle, it was underutilized. In marriage, assets are shared. I maximized. No harm meant. He glanced my way, eyes hollowed by regrets. Poor cousin, self-pity. Voss leaned forward, glasses low on his nose. The courtroom hushed thick as fog. Mr. Hargrove, maximizing, doesn't cover forging a spouse's name on a deed tied to OSS relics that helped win a world war. Or dipping into protected accounts for personal gambles. Your brunch brag? It's Exhibit A in premeditation. Wire fraud, forgery, heritage violation, and that's before the pattern charges from those other victims. The gavel fell like a breaker. 5 years federal. No parole, sweethearts. $320 restitution, including artifact repatriation costs to the archives. Derek slumped as marshals led him out. His Elena, a whisper lost in the shuffle. Lydia and Victor drew probation and fines, $85 clawed back from their gifts. Their Lincoln repossessed mid-drive to court. Tyler's flip earned him immunity as crown witness. His testimony a gut punch. They all knew. Brunch talks about culling Elena's waist. Lydia's spreadsheets on her salary contributions. We called it strategy, but it was theft, plain. Brooke scattered like chum, ghosting Tyler for a new zip code. Her intense family excuse gold in her fresh start. Through it all, the divorce unspooled clean as a receding tide. Maine's no-fault laws favoring the defrauded. Judge Elena Vasquez, no relation, but her nod felt like kinship, awarding me the works. The Colonial sold quick for a clean break. Residual accounts Derek hadn't drained. Even Lydia's antique silver service she'd earmarked for him. The silver? I melted it down quietly. The proceeds seeding a scholarship for Latina compliance pros, poetic, turning their heirlooms into ladders for women like me. The ink on the divorce decree dried under a late November sky, gray as the harbor fog rolling in from Portland. But for me, it felt like the first clear dawn in years. Judge Vasquez had made it swift, no fault, but laced with that quiet fury reserved for cases like mine. Her gavel a punctuation mark on 7 years of eroded trust. Ms. Ramirez, she'd said, using my reclaimed name like a reclamation itself. The court restores what's yours by right. Untainted, house, accounts, the works, and counsel the defendant. Restitution isn't just dollars, it's reckoning. Derek, via video from holding, had nodded mutely. his beard unkempt, eyes averted from the screen as if facing me might finally force the mirror. I walked out into the chill, papers tucked under my arm like a map to uncharted waters, and drove straight north, no stops, no calls back to the Hargrove echo chamber. Lydia had tried. Of course, voicemails piling up like driftwood. Her voice cracking through tears. Elena, for old times, we can fix this. Family therapy, perhaps, but old times were the chains I'd slipped. Therapy couldn't mend what they'd frayed on purpose. Victor's texts were curt, businesslike, legal fees mounting. Assistance appreciated, as if my silence had been alone, not a lifeline severed. Tyler? Radio silence after his testimony. Rumors swirling he'd skipped town for a fresh pivot in Florida. Brooke's shadow long gone. The Hargroves, once a fortress of judgments, now a sandcastle at low tide, probation hearings draining their nest egg. Club memberships cancelled, neighbors' whispers turning to outright stares. The restitution flowed in fits and starts, $320 carved from Derek's frozen assets. Funneled through federal coffers to me in the archives. My share hit first, enough to pay down the cottage mortgage I'd never missed, with surplus for the upgrades I'd only dreamed of in Tokyo nights. The management firm met me at the door on that first return. Keys in hand, their report crisp. Property held pristine. Ma'am, no incidents, well, except the feds sealing the attic for scans. Those maps? They're museum bound now, but the place is yours. Clear title. Inside, the air welcomed me back, salt-kissed and sun-warmed. The windows flung open to let the Atlantic roar its hello. The porch, that faithful sentinel, had been extended by the crew. New cedar rails wrapping halfway around. Benches carved from reclaimed lobster traps, facing the sea like thrones for one. The kitchen gleamed with quartz counters I'd picked from a catalog in Shinjuku. The clawfoot sink polished to reflect the foam below. Upstairs, the attic vault stood empty now. Tom's OSS ghosts repatriated to DC vaults. But in their place, I'd hung a framed print of a World War II Liberty ship, Eleanor's gift. Forwarded after the news hit the papers. Her note in spidery script, knew you had the salt in your veins. Dear, Tom would approve. Agent Torres dropped by unannounced a week later, pulling up in a nondescript Subaru rather than the Bureau black and white. 2 to-go cups from the Camden Lobster Shack steaming in her hands, oat milk lattes. No sugar, just how I'd mentioned offhand in our debrief. We settled on the new benches. The October wind whipping gulls overhead, mist rising from the waves like steam from our mugs. Case closed on the core, she said, blowing across hers, her off-duty sweater softening the suit lines. But your tip on Derek's bank patterns? Busted 2 more ops, women in tech, finance. Much like you, cleared contractors whose idle assets vanished into his advisory fees. You're the domino, Ramirez. Her words settled warm, not as praise, but as shared current, the quiet solidarity of women navigating tidesmen mistake for still water. The artifact angle sealed it, I admitted, tracing the bench grain. Eleanor's trunk. Who knew a widow's keepsake could topple a dynasty? Torres chuckled, low and real. History's full of tripwires like that. Yours just happened to be Seaside. She left with a card for the next merger. If it gets sticky, and I watched her taillights fade down the cliff road. The sea filling the quiet she'd left. Letters started arriving then, postmarked from the low security spot upstate where Derek drew his 5-year sentence. The first was rage scribbled, accusing me of setting the trap with my secret Fed ties. As if my clearance were a ploy instead of earned armor. The second softened to woe is me, lamenting the bunk beds and commissary lines, wondering aloud if I'd visit. By the third, a fragile admission crept in. I see it now, the erasures. The way I let them shape us. Should have asked about Tokyo, about the cottage, about you. No apology, not truly. Just the echo of a man finally hearing the waves he'd ignored. I read them on the porch at dusk, the horizon bleeding orange into indigo, then fed them to a small fire pit I dug myself, pages curling like old charts. Sparks dancing up to join the stars. No replies, no bridges burned twice. The local rag milked the scandal for weeks. Seaside secret sinks cyan. World War II relic exposes embezzlement ring. Reporters sniffing at my door with mics and offers of your truth. I turned them away. The facts louder than any soundbite. Derek in stripes. Lydia auctioning heirlooms to cover fines. Victor driving a used Civic. Their American dream foreclosed by the greed they'd glorified. My world reshaped itself in the spaces they left. The firm promoted me post Tanaka, senior director now. Remote from the cottage half the year. My rates climbing as word spread of the compliance queen who cracked a fraud ring. Neighbors in Camden, once nodding strangers, brought pies and offers to haul driftwood. Their welcome homes, laced with that New England reserve but genuine as granite. Invites trickled in, to book swaps at the library. Sunset sails with the widow's circle, but I chose my rhythms. Mornings journaling with the tide. Afternoons on calls that spanned oceans. Evenings with a glass of Pinot from the corner market. No judgments on the vintage. Eleanor visited once, frail but fierce at 83. Her cardigan swapped for a fisherman's knit. We walked the shore, her arm in mine, picking sea glass smoothed by storms. Places like this, she said, pocketing a cobalt shard, they don't just shelter, they teach. Tom's maps? They weren't treasures, they were reminders. Secrets kept right can change the current. I nodded, the weight of her words settling like sand after high tide. On the first anniversary of that brunch, the horrible, holy morning when the feds crashed their celebration, I poured that same market Pinot on the extended porch. The sun dipping low to gild the waves in fire. No toasts to absent ghosts. Just the symphony of surf and wind through the wild roses. An owl's distant call threading the dusk. My phone lay dark on the rail. No group chats buzzing with passive digs. No voicemails laced with control. No texts dimming my light. The silence wasn't empty, it rang with the space I'd reclaimed. Vast as the Atlantic, deep as the truths I'd whispered to these walls. And here's the quiet truth I've carried from those depths. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The undertow that pulls the overconfident under while you surface stronger. In a world that dims women's winds to whispers. Build your shores in secret. Register them deep, and let the tides do the rest. They always do. If that twist with the World War II maps had you gripping your coffee a little tighter. Smash that like button. Your support keeps these stories of comeback washing in. What hit you hardest, the brunch crash, or Elena's fire pit farewell to the letters? Drop it in the comments, and subscribe with the bell so you catch the next wave of real talk revenge. Thanks for riding this one with me, until next tide.